What's up, my little baby muscle hamsters? Today we're talking about strength standards because this is something that just always grinds my gears. I've made a couple videos over the years to try and break down like the landscape of strength, tell you what you're likely to see out there, what's a bit more rare, what's going to make you competitive, what are good numbers to shoot for. And one of the ways that I just know we're cooked is by the reaction that we get as people are displaying their anaphylaxis in the comment section from their intense allergic reaction to any type of standard or expectation. Let me give you this reel I came across from the Strength Co, where dude shared his basic benchmarks that he holds for most men. See if you agree.
Do you have benchmarks for people?
The first thing I tell people is you need to be able to squat and deadlift your body weight for 5 reps. And that is like step one. And before we worry about how strong or strong enough, how long do I go? What do I eat? Like we got to get there. And then after that, I think like the preponderance of men can press a plate overhead if they train for amount of time. You saw 135 pounds. Yeah, I think they can bench 225. I think they can squat 315. I do think most can deadlift 405, but it's going to take a lot of work. So like 350 is probably like a more realistic.
Those are my exact number goals.
All right, so you guys got that. He says to start out, squat, deadlift your body weight for a set of 5. If you're 185 pounds, a 185 squat and deadlift for 5 reps, that doesn't seem monumental or difficult. In fact, it doesn't seem like that would probably take more than a year for anybody that was actually eating and training in order to be strong. In fact, of all the places that I've been over the years, regular corporate gyms, CrossFit boxes, more serious gyms that might have powerlifters, strongmen, more serious bodybuilders in it, it was rare to go to a place where there was a population of women that had been training for several years and had barbell lifts as a staple in their training where they weren't doing 225 for reps. And I'm not talking about women that weigh 250 pounds either. And of course, we have to separate who's more competitive, more serious, who's been training longer, versus the person who's more casual or less directly strength focused with their training. As a basic generic ass benchmark, just a minimum of like, hey, these are good numbers to shoot for, where it's like, okay, you're a bit strong, you lift weights, you stand out. A 2-plate bench press, a 3-plate squat, a 4-plate deadlift, or like a 350 deadlift. Let's look at how the people in the comments responded. So first off, under any video having to do with strength standards, I can tell you right off the bat, the most liked comment is going to be the positivity D-bag who's just talking about, don't compare yourself, guys, just try to be the best you can. There's nothing wrong with blocking out comparisons and going about the act of lifting weights because you like it. That just means you don't take it that seriously. It's okay to not take it that seriously. But most people get into these disciplines that take a lot of time, a lot of effort because they have lofty goals. So whatever discipline you're thinking about, whether it's playing an instrument, whether it's learning martial arts, there is no discipline you can think of where you excel by not comparing yourself to other people. In fact, I don't know how you expect to be physically strong if you are too internally weak and fragile to be able to stomach the basic idea of comparison. That is what competition is. It's absolutely true that you as an individual are not going to line up one for one with the other people you see. But that's actually what makes this a worthwhile endeavor, because it's up to you to engage with the problem solving, to find the things that work for you that might be different from other people. And the people that are good at problem solving find a way. What's your benchmark for running? I think everyone should run 15 miles every day. This is to imply that the benchmarks of a 1-plate overhead press and a 2-plate bench is the equivalent of running more than a half marathon every day. Like, let's say I'm taking a sedentary adult male who's never lifted weights and I have them do a standing strict press. It is rare for them to not be able to handle like 75 pounds on a barbell. And usually if they are that weak, it's because they're sincerely underfed and underweight. So what's an appropriate benchmark? Fucking 105, 95? Like, how close does it have to be to the average starting point of somebody who's never lifted a day in their life for it to be an acceptable benchmark? You got somebody responding, most men in the gym are not doing these on average. What in the fuck does that have to do with what a benchmark is? There's this compulsive desire when people are giving standards in a discipline to pull it back and just look at what people that aren't really seriously engaged in that discipline are doing. It's like when people say, oh, remember, only 1% of men are ever going to lift such and such. And it's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. The average person doesn't lift weights, so they suck at lifting weights, which means standing out as a weightlifter is really easy. That should actually give you a sense of hope. It's like I'm already standing apart from the population by virtue of doing this thing they're not doing. That's entirely different than trying to rank what is achievable once you sign up and start doing it. Do you know any chess players that cope by saying, most people don't know how to play chess, so I'm doing pretty good? The fact is that most of the men you see in the gym aren't just gluing themselves to barbell exercises or taking them very seriously at all. There's going to be a lot more people that are going to spend all their time on the machines, or older dudes that are just on cycles and ellipticals and maybe do some dumbbell work. There's going to be some people that casually jump between a bunch of different things. But if we're going to reduce it down to the group of people that focus on these lifts and take their progression seriously, after about a year or two, most men are absolutely doing these numbers. Like, consider the deadlift. If I'm going to imagine the type of sedentary male that can't deadlift over 200 pounds, you're talking about somebody who is extremely underweight and extremely underfed. If you test all sedentary males on the deadlift, the average dude is absolutely going to be over 200 pounds. So what is a benchmark for considering yourself trained or stronger than the population? Less than 300 pounds? And it makes me wonder what people are expecting when they're setting benchmarks, because it doesn't seem like people actually want something to strive for. It seems like if there is an obstacle, if there's something in their way, or their special snowflake circumstances aren't being considered, that they demand some type of special adjustment. I'm torn on this. I think a 315 squat would take most men several years of consistently squatting. Most men, once they creep into the high 200s, with improper bracing, will injure themselves. That is just absolutely not true. I've coached so many sedentary people to get their squat well into the threes. The idea that most men are going to injure themselves that's insane. And what's unfortunate is these opinions enter in and get adopted by people, even though they're from people that they themselves have like no direct experience working with a lot of people. They're pulling these assumptions out of their ass. This guy says he's 210, squats 340 for 8, 450 deadlift, 275 bench. Pretty strong dude, but also powerlifted and been lifting recreationally for like 10 years. Strength programming for a few years and just got into competing now. So that reads most of the 10 years dicking around, doing whatever. Programming for strength for a couple of years, and he just now started competing. Yet he has these pretty good numbers without being excessively big. So I'm trying to figure out who is looking at these benchmark strength videos without making the assumption that you have to be oriented towards training for strength using proper programming methods for enough years to actually start to see progress. The only people that are looking at this without those basic assumptions are the low information consumers that don't want to actually commit. I will never understand people spouting arbitrary strength numbers that don't correlate with body weight. I don't understand people that fixate on fucking body weight. Strength is a measure of how much force you can produce, and that force doesn't change if you're bigger or stronger. It's just your capacity to demonstrate it increases. So if you're interested in getting more strength, you're going to try to add to your body weight in a way that facilitates strength. It is no different than if I took up marathon running and then bitched that I wasn't getting some time adjustments for benchmarks based on the fact that I'm fucking fat. Any rational person would be like, be less fucking fat, you'll run better. If you value this American Ninja Warrior aesthetic, that's fine. Go compare yourself with the other small dudes. But what do you think a video looks like if you're adding in weight classes? You end up with this matrix that's too long to go over in a 20-minute video, let alone a 60-second reel. The people that adopt uncritically strength body weight ratio as being the most important thing over just strength are 100% people that are coping. I've said this before and I'll repeat it as many times as I need to. Functional strength or real world strength that is going to be able to help you in the circumstances you are likely to experience in real life. So people have this idea of functional, that it's bouncing around like you're the main character in Assassin's Creed. That is not functional strength, because that's not what any aspect of your real life is ever going to require. What your life will require is being able to pick up things that are awkward and cumbersome if you're helping a buddy move at some point, or it's going to be if you ever, God forbid, get into a physical altercation. Nothing about the things that you are likely to need your strength for in real life has a damn thing to do with being lighter. At the end of the day, nobody's picking a fucking bouncer or a professional mover based on their strength body weight ratio. So this really is just a knee-jerk reaction from people that need to cope. They look at standards, the standards are too high, so they're like, well, where's my special standards? And it doesn't just stop with weight. People then go to leverages, they then go to life circumstances, they then go to illness. What is the strength standard for me, given that I weigh 172 and a half pounds, that I have a -3 ape index, that I have mild scoliosis, given that I'm extremely fucking picky about my food, I don't want to get too fat, I like to rock climb on the weekends, and also I'm a leukemia survivor. What these people really want is a number that they can look at and say, hey, I did it, and pat themselves on the back despite their incredible lack of ambition and just piss poor effort. It is no different than marathons that started handing people medals at something like the 18-mile mark when they feel like they've had a rough day. So you can bow out and you still get a medal. Oh, well, 99% of the population can't even run 18 miles. The issue, I believe, with how strong is that proper form of technique is quite difficult to master for many people, and you may try 100 subtle differences before you find a way that actually works. That is grossly incorrect, and it's unfortunate. I don't really fault this guy, because if you spend a lot of time on the internet, you probably do come to the conclusion that these minute technical differences that people make all kinds of content over are actually what your lifts hinge on, and nothing could be further from the truth. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of comfort in the chaos that is life on planet Earth. You get good at how you train. If you have a certain setup on your bench or your squat or whatever, if you do it over and over and over, you adapt to it to where it feels comfortable, even if it's not directly optimal. None of these benchmarks are you walking a tightrope, this razor thin path to get to just barely scrape the top of what your genetic potential is. These benchmarks are like you doing some basic hard work, trying to get better after a couple years. Eating like getting some more muscle is kind of part of the equation. The assumption is with these benchmarks that it's casuals that are putting out a minimum amount of effort consistently for a couple of years. This is like just you as a dude doing some shit when you have some free time. What is reasonable to expect? These are more than reasonable to expect. Squatting and deadlifting has a lot more variability because of people's builds, but it doesn't matter as much as you think. I've come across so many freaking people that have good lifts despite having an approach that seems counterintuitive to their build, because you get good at how you train. To this day, I do most of my lifts in New Balances because I'm a strong man and I'm going to be doing a contest in the sand or in gravel or on a 3-degree slope with the sun in my eyes. So I've learned not to sweat the small stuff, and I'm constantly getting people that come up to me while I lift and try to give me little tips. You know, if you fix your footwear, or if you use this piece of equipment, or if you do this cue, it's going to be so much better. And the truth is, when I hit my biggest squat or deadlift, I don't notice a difference because I've been lifting in New Balances the entire time, so it feels the fucking same. Now here, this guy, 1, 2, 3, 4 for basic strength. I think that's just fine as a basic introductory benchmark. 2, 3, 4, 5 to be a unit. And I kind of agree with that. If you could strict press 225, you're a strong dude anywhere you go. 315 bench, 4-plate squat, 5-plate deadlift. However, these are still introductory for competitive numbers. I'm going to say something controversial, and that is if you took most men and put them on a serious strength barbell progression where they had sufficient calories, sufficient motivation, a training environment conducive to growth and progress, and they stuck to it for 4 or 5 years, I think these numbers are actually representative of what the average dude is capable of without any fucking drugs. Now, as people go longer, they're going to find they have strengths and weaknesses. So you might actually find that you have a particular strength where one lift can actually go a lot farther. You might surprise yourself. Now, this was a video I made where I took all of the data available on open powerlifting to figure out like what averages were for squat, bench, and dead. And you guys can check this out. I didn't do every weight class because we don't have all year. I think I took 3 or 4 to kind of give an idea of how strength on average goes up and where you actually start to become competitive. Now, one of the reasons I think this is useful is, one, because powerlifting is super accessible. There's this idea that powerlifting is somehow just freaks that spend all their time doing that. Most of the people that go into powerlifting only do a couple of meets. They usually do it earlier in their career. There's a huge surge of interest. The people that start lifting, they're like, oh, I'll do it when I'm strong. They almost never do it. But people that are motivated usually start out rather early and will start prepping in their first couple of years of serious strength training. If you can lift an empty bar, you can go into a powerlifting meet. And like I said earlier, just as we have all this data with men, and you'll be like, well, those are just all freaks, we also have a lot of data of female powerlifters. And it gets a lot harder to use that cope when you're looking at numbers that the average 165-pound female powerlifter is hitting. Again, not the world record holder, the average. We have this. Also important, these numbers are powerlifting meet only. A lot of these numbers, especially as they go up in the percentile, were hit by athletes that revolve more and more of their life around getting to the point just to hit that number for months, if not years. Oh my God, they train for months to hit a particular goal. These numbers don't include the layman who exercises a bit weekly just for health or don't touch weights at all. Wherever you sit on these charts, the percentage gets a lot smaller when you include everyone that isn't a powerlifter. Oh, looks like I replied over a year ago. What did I say? That is true. I would just warn against putting too much stock in that. Ranking your strength against sedentary people is kind of like ranking speed against an amputee. And the Copes continue. Silly to compare your physique as a natural recreational bodybuilder to an IFBB pro. Why is that silly? Everybody wants to see how they rank against the best in the world. If you bench press and you do working sets with 225, you watch the NFL Combine because you want to see how close you are. There are natural bodybuilders who have incredible physiques, and when they look at certain IFBB pros, they're like, hey bro, I'm actually not that far away. It doesn't seem so silly. What about versus your average gym goer? I like the info here and it's interesting, but people who show up at official powerlifting meets are not average gym goers. I'm just trying to rack my brain to think of another discipline where people are so interested in only comparing themselves to the people that are the least interested, the least motivated, use the least methods. This is antithetical to competition. It's the opposite. It's here's me. I woke up like this. This is me just as I am. Show me the group of people that are below me so that I can feel good about it. So I just had to go on this rant because I really worry that our culture is cooked. I mean, lifting weights in general, it attracts a certain insecure type. I am that insecure type. Real, recognize real. And getting involved in this is one of the best things I ever did. Like, yes, it gave me confidence, but not by like adding muscle or getting stronger nearly as much as by gluing myself to something and proving to myself that I can gain excellence, that I can get good at it, that I can overcome. And if you look at something like martial arts, it's going to be based on so many virtues. It's going to be based on foundational elements of character that are required. They're not able to be separated. If you think of something like martial arts, but you take this kind of anti-competitive approach to it, what you have is Cobra Kai. You have the opposite of sportsmanship. When you start out as a white belt, the point is to outgrow the white belt, not to spend all your time looking at fucking middle schoolers. So you're like, well, you haven't trained karate for 2 months, so I can kick your ass. I think many people have this kind of default coping mechanism built in their brain. And it's these disciplines that teach you how to orient yourself to get the result you want from life. And I just find it very disheartening that so many people in this field that are interested in lifting are left without any actual model for what that character looks like. It's just a scattershot shit show of different approaches, different training programs, different influencers, and none of it almost ever really relates back to foundationally, what about you as a person can improve, needs to improve in order for you to get to where you want to go? And how does that relate to the rest of your life? I believe society would generally be better if everybody lifted, but not if like this is the way that they conceptualize lifting. I want people dissatisfied. I want people looking at their entire childhood of being a lazy fat shit on the internet and say, I need to correct this. I'm an adult in the first world. I got a magic fucking information machine at my fingertips. Maybe I can figure out how to do more. And maybe by the time I die, I can look back and say, hey, I did something that's worth talking about. I was going to talk a lot longer, but my camera just died. So thanks so much for watching. Leave your comments below. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.